Welcome back to State of the Nation. I'm Michael Portillo. As ever, Nigel Farage was busy making headlines today, addressing a Reform UK rally at the Rainton Arena in the northeast of England. The leader of the party, projected in one poll to win 18 seats, had this to say to a crowd of 1,000 people.
The Tories say we're in economic trouble because of the pandemic. But hang on, you didn't need to lock us down for a second and a third time. I actually believe the long-term economic and psychological damage from lockdowns 2 and 3 represents the biggest mistake any British government, supported by the opposition, has ever made in peacetime.
Farage also made headlines when he called for a confrontation with the French over channel crossings. Whilst Britain pays France to suppress illegal immigration, vessels operating for the French state escort illegal migrants in their dinghies towards Britain. I'm rejoined now by my panel, GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and the journalist and Conservative peer Paul Goodman. Paul, is this true that in return for the hundreds of millions that we're paying France, I mean, I've seen photographs, but they're only photographs, of what appear to be vessels working for the French state, which are escorting illegal migrants to the median line in the English Channel. That's certainly what Nigel Farage is asking us to believe.
It's certainly true that we have given money to the French to try to deal with a problem. I remember that happening when Priti Patel was Home Secretary. What I don't understand from Nigel Farage so clearly, and I've been trying to think about it all day, is what his solution to the problem is, regardless of what we are or are not doing with the French.
Well, he might want his money back.
He might want his money back. He might also want a solution that's completely impracticable, which seems to be the case, which is simply trying to force the boats back on the French. OK, you try and do that. What happens then?
Well, but there is a halfway house. I mean, it is common ground between us and the French that these sailings are illegal.
Well, they're not.
They're not illegal.
No. I mean, migrants may become illegal when they get to this country. It is not illegal under international law to sail across the channel in a dinghy.
Even though you're clearly imperiling your life. I mean, I remember Nigel saying that if he tried to sail in his little boat from any French port, he would be absolutely hemmed around by bureaucracy and red tape, which would prevent him sailing in his little boat. But you're saying if 50 people set out
to claim asylum
in imminent danger of capsizing, arranged and financed by a criminal gang, that there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing illegal.
Nothing illegal. Under international law, nothing illegal. And the Illegal Migration Act, which is badly called, actually makes that point. It doesn't say that these are illegal. What it says is they're inadmissible when they arrive in this country. At that point, they can well become illegal migrants, but they're not illegal migrants while they're in the channel.
So, if you were the Prime Minister, and you'd paid hundreds of millions to the French,
500 million,
500 million, yes, 500 million, and you saw the dinghies leaving France not only unhindered but actually helped, escorted towards the median line, would you not want your money back?
No, on the basis that they're not escorting them. What they're doing is they're standing by. The French attitude to all this is they work under international maritime law. That means that they don't come to the aid of those. They don't aid the dinghies, but they only come to their aid if they get into trouble or they're asked to. Other than that, they're purely standing by. So they're not escorts, they're not trying to usher them across the channel. It's nonsense. And the rest of the money is being used for 500 extra French police. We've also got a detention centre being built. It won't come online till 2026, but we have actually got that happening. That's where the money is going.
Nigel, you've given a brilliant explanation, if I may say so. But I'm not at all sure that you haven't rather helped Nigel Farage with your explanation. Because it just strikes me as so completely absurd that should be the case.
There's another oddity about the Farage argument, which is that the picture you're painting is as though the French were watching every single boat go out. And I would want to know how many boats the French are actually watching, because there will be numbers going off from the beaches of Normandy all the time that are not being observed by French boats. That is part of the problem.
May I switch the subject to Nigel Farage's other subject, which was the damage done by the second and third lockdowns. Did you have a sympathy with that position?
That's a really interesting argument that Farage made. It was the second or third time I've seen him argue something that's contrary to the instincts of his supporters. So I heard him lauding the French healthcare system in a debate the other evening, so, which again is not really where they are. And this was an instance of him making an argument that a lot of reform voters at the time would have found sympathy with. They would have wanted more extensive lockdowns. But actually, on the subject of the actual...
How do you judge that? Have they been polled?
Yes, you have.
I'm a potential reform voter, and I disliked lockdowns very much and argued against them at the time very much.
There has been polling on it, and most of the opposition to lockdown at the time, the articulate opposition, came from articulate libertarian-minded journalists at the rather top end of the scale, not from hope you recognise yourself, not from sort of ordinary voters. But I did have a sympathy for his argument in retrospect, in that he was very careful not to apply this to the first lockdown, when we knew rather less about COVID, and when there was a better case for locking down while you tried to get to grips with what was going on.
It seemed to go down well with the crowd tonight, this particular point. We could hear him being cheered and applauded for the point. And Nigel, what do you make of it? I mean, first of all, do you happen to think that the second and third lockdowns were pretty damaging economically and psychologically? And whether you do or whether you don't, do you think there's potential political advantage to Farage in raising this point now? No,
because COVID hasn't really played a big part of this election anyway. I mean, COVID is past. Well, it's still with us, but it's not with us in a pandemic form. I mean, if you look at the lockdowns, Nigel, interestingly, did keep away from the first lockdown. But even if you look at the second and third lockdowns, every time we had a lockdown, infections went down, and a few weeks later, deaths went down too. Lockdowns quite patently worked. And the question should be, especially with the third lockdown, did we do it soon enough? We should have done it at the end of December 2020.
You haven't mentioned costs there at all. You don't think that cost ought to be brought into the argument at all. I can't believe we're talking about lockdowns in 2024, but here we are.
All right. Bring costs into it. No, I wasn't bringing costs into it. I was bringing human life into it. And had we locked down, the third lockdown...
Yes, but human life has a value. If you're going to build a motorway, you'd say this motorway saves so many lives a year and it costs so many millions, and then you come up with a figure as to whether it's worth doing. We never did that in the pandemic. We didn't say these are the lives that are being saved and this is the life expectancy of the lives being saved and this is what it's costing.
So what you'd like to do there is put a cost on those lives that we saved. Right. Okay. Well,
which is what we do in all other fields.
Yeah, but if you're talking about the numbers of people who are likely to die, so we lost 270,000 people during COVID. Without the vaccine, we could have lost another 500,000.
Yes, the vaccine was indeed a great saviour. And not even Nigel Farage is making an argument about the vaccine. Thank you very much to you both. Very good humoured debate there. Paul Goodman and Nigel Nelson.